portions of it perfectly in their mind and kind of let some of the other stuff go. That doesn't sound familiar to anybody, does it? Surely we've never done that in the modern world, in modern churches. We've never defined certain rules and laws that we hold on to steadfastly, but we neglect some other things. I hope we're not guilty of that. But I fear we probably are, all sarcasm aside. That is why the law was put into place, so that people would be led to Christ. And this passage says, let no debt remain outstanding. In other words, break your scales. He did this and I did that, and are we? That's the thing about gift giving in its most human form that really troubles me. Is that, and I'm the worst at it. Someone gives me something, give me a gift, and I don't think, oh, thank you so much. I know this. You had to go out of your way. This would maybe cost you something that you didn't just spend the money. But my first thought is, oh my goodness, I didn't get you anything. Why? Because in our human mind we got scales, not scales like reptiles, but scales. We balance it out. This says, Paul says, don't let any debt remain outstanding except to love one another, because when you do that, you have fulfilled the law. You keep all 600 plus of those laws when you love each other, because that's at the heart of the law. And that's one of the things our forefathers in the Israelite community missed. For them, it did become about what lamb and what ram and what kind of sacrifice for this. They were so focused in. I'm not running them down, just speaking the facts. They got so focused on the leaves that they missed the forest. And that was that God loved them so much, He was trying to bring them. He brought them out of a place where they had no idea what God had planned for them. And He had to create a nation of millions of people, and they needed laws. And He wanted them to see that this would not cut it, that they were looking for somebody later to come, and that somebody is Jesus. And through Jesus, by faith, because we have His grace, when we love each other the way He loves us, then we have fulfilled the law. That's a pretty cool thing. You cannot fulfill the law unless you have Christ in your heart. And some of you go, I didn't even thought about the law. I have. And that's an amazing thing to think, that all of those commandments are fulfilled perfectly when I love the way He loved. And back to the backwards logic, I said it a while ago, the backwards logic of what it means to be a disciple, the Matthew 5 passage. You've heard that it was said, love your neighbor and hate your enemy. But I tell you, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you, that you may be sons of your Father in heaven. Now listen, He causes the sun to rise on the evil and the good, and He sends rain on the righteous and the unrighteous. If you love those who love you, what reward will you get? And are not even tax collectors doing that? And if you greet only your brothers, what are you doing more than others? Do not even pagans do that? Be perfect. In other words, be mature. Be completely holistic and full like God, because that's the way God is. That is backwards logic in any culture. I am going to be kind to you and help you and turn the other cheek and go the extra mile and loan to you without expecting repayment because of who Jesus is, even if you haven't done that to me. That makes no sense from a human perspective. Everything about how we relate to one another relationally on planet Earth is what I said last week. It's give and take. If I give you something, if I give you something, you better give me something back, so that I can take from you. That's logical. This makes no logical sense whatsoever. But it is a life designed by love. Here's a couple I put in here specifically worded this way for my good friend Ned and me, because we talk about this a lot. If you're going to live a life designed by God, designed by love, you absolutely, positively have to have horrible eyesight. And mine's getting worse. So I go back to contacts, the numbers just keep going up. I'm like, I wish my savings account would go up like that, with percentages on top of it. You know the passage, don't you? You see at just the right time, when we were still powerless, Christ died for the ungodly. Very rarely will anyone die for a righteous man, though for a good man, someone might possibly dare to die. But God demonstrates His own love for us in this, that while we were yet sinners, Christ died for us. What does that mean, terrible eyesight? That means what we think is, what humans think is, all right, so let's get and I've heard people say this to me, I've got to get my life in order. I need to see my life is all cleared up and all fixed before I come to God. The theological response is, it'll never happen. Get your ducks in a row, and what happens? Somebody breaks out a shotgun. See, what kills me about this passage, what tickles me about this passage, that's a Karen word, is Paul says, you see, at just the right time. And my response is, no, I don't see. I don't get it. It doesn't make any sense. God could have picked any time to send his son into the world. And he picked one of the most, when it comes to what was happening at that time, awful. I mean, you got Rome conquering the world, and even though they were trying to establish Pax Romana, the peace of Rome, there was gladiator stuff. They would expose children on piles, which is a postpartum abortion. They were doing all this stuff. I mean, just terrible. I mean, you couldn't have picked a worse time to send Jesus into the world. And Paul says, you see, at just the right time. And I go, no, I don't see. Well, then you got to change the way you see. You got to have terrible eyesight. From a human perspective, it makes perfect sense to God to come in. And then this is my father. This is especially for you, Ned. Ned's going, oh, thank you, man. I got a life design. I got a real life designed by love. I got a lousy memory. Man, do I have a bad memory. I've read this at more weddings than I can count. And weddings are tough for me. Because if you didn't know, I get emotional sometimes. I know that's hard for some of you to believe. But especially at weddings, it's a joke. If you haven't ever seen me cry, you haven't been coming very long. So I do this passage at weddings, and even though I'm struggling at times to fight back to tears, not because I'm sad, because I'm just emotional, this is the one place where I actually have to fight back a little giggle. Exactly. Because as I'm reading it to them, I'm thinking, you have no idea what you're getting yourself into. My favorite premarital, I'm about to do 2 premarital prepare and enrich sessions with people that I don't really even know that well. They heard that I've come cheap, I guess, and they don't have anybody else, so that got me in. But my favorite thing I've told a million times is Anna, and I forget her fiance's name. Why are you getting married? Because we love each other. You're so stupid. You have no idea what you're saying. You really love. Is it flitter your eyes when stars come out, love, or is it this love? It's patient. It's kind. It does not envy. It does not boast. It is not proud. It is not rude. It is not self-seeking. It's not easily angered. And this is my favorite. This is the coup de grace. It keeps no records of wrong. Somewhere along the way, those of us have been married for a while, we sort of put that one on the back burner. Keeping the record of wrongs is the only thing that keeps me in an argument. Are you kidding? That's the thing I got to have. Don't you remember when Aspen was born in 25? Yeah, back then. Boy, it's hard, isn't it? I'm making a joke, but isn't it hard when you really, really have your heart broken and stomped on and spat on to let that go? One of the most revelatory things in my own life when it comes to understanding God and understanding His Word came a number of years ago when some of you in this room helped me see more clearly that the idea of letting that go is an ongoing process, not a single event. Amen. Because the more I practice turning loose of those kinds of things, then the worse my memory becomes. I've really sort of altered my idea of the passage in Hebrews 10, where God says, I will forgive your sins and I will remember them no more. And the thing is, because of who God is and what I know about the nature of God, I know that He doesn't forget in the same way I